It was the day of Nkechi's wedding. The sun was high, and the air smelled of fresh flowers and the scent of jollof rice, as family and friends gathered to witness the union of Chike and Nkechi. The village was alive with excitement. The elders had come together, draped in brightly colored attires, singing songs of praise and blessing the union. Nkechi, her heart pounding, stood in her wedding gown, a vision of beauty to many, though she did not see it herself. As they exchanged vows, the atmosphere was perfect. But then, Chike, with a smirk on his face, spoke words that would stay with Nkechi forever. "You are too slim, Nkechi," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "A woman should have some flesh on her bones. You don't look like a wife." The crowd fell silent. The insult stung like a sharp thorn to Nkechi's heart, and she stood frozen, unable to speak. Her mother's eyes flashed with anger, but no one said a word. Guests began to murmur as Nkechi's face turned pale. She could feel the heat of the humiliation creeping up her neck. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, yet now it felt like the darkest. Her mind raced. Had Chike meant what he said? She had always been slim, but she never thought it would be something to be ashamed of. Her wedding day, a symbol of love, had turned into an event marked by her body's imperfections. At the reception, laughter and music filled the air, but Nkechi could not join in. Every smile she forced felt like a lie. She sat quietly, watching the other women in the room, full-figured, confident, and lively. She couldn't help but compare herself to them. Her body was not like theirs. She tried to laugh, but the words Chike had said kept echoing in her ears. A cruel reminder of what she would have to live with now. When the night finally ended, Nkechi found herself alone in her room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The wedding dress she had been so excited to wear now felt heavy, like a cloak of shame. She touched her arms and waist, wondering if there was something wrong with her. Why was she so thin? Her mind twisted in confusion, the pain of rejection sinking deeper into her chest. She had hoped for love, not this. Their honeymoon in a quiet seaside town was supposed to bring joy, but it only brought more isolation. Chike, though physically present, seemed distant. He spent his time on his phone, or lost in his thoughts. Nkechi, desperate for his affection, tried to ignore the hurtful words of their wedding day, but they lingered, festering like an untreated wound. She tried to engage with him, but he was indifferent, and she realized that perhaps her body, her shape, was something that would always drive a wedge between them. Days passed, and Nkechi found herself obsessively comparing her body to others. She started skipping meals, hoping that she could gain weight and look better in Chike's eyes. She began working out rigorously, pushing her body beyond its limits. But every time she looked in the mirror, she saw the same slender figure staring back. It wasn't enough for Chike, and it seemed it would never be enough for her. In the quiet of the night, Nkechi would cry, her tears staining her pillow. She longed for the days when she had loved her body and felt confident in her skin. But now, every glance in the mirror reminded her of the flaws Chike had pointed out. She remembered when they had first met, and he had complimented her for her slim frame. But now, she felt like that same frame was all that was wrong with her. One evening, Chike finally spoke to her, but his words were not of love. He mentioned that she needed to eat more, perhaps even gain some weight, to look more attractive. The suggestion made her stomach twist in anger. Who was he to decide what her body should look like? But she stayed silent, too afraid to confront him, too afraid to admit that his words had already damaged her. The memory of her wedding day resurfaced when Nkechi looked at herself in the mirror again, seeing not the woman she was, but the woman Chike had called ugly. Each moment felt like a betrayal to herself. She wanted to stand up for her body, but her fear of rejection kept her silent. The love she once had for herself was slipping away, and all she had left was the desire to be enough for Chike. In search of comfort, Nkechi returned to her mother's home for a weekend visit. There, surrounded by the love and wisdom of the elders, she felt a glimmer of hope. Her mother greeted her with a warm embrace, sensing the heaviness in her daughter's heart. Over meals and evening chats, Nkechi's mother spoke of the strength of their ancestors, of women who had stood tall, regardless of their body sizes, and had been loved for their resilience and spirit. As the evening fires burned and the family gathered, Nkechi listened to the stories of women from their village. She learned of the beauty of the elders, how they had been admired not for their shapes, but for their wisdom, their courage, and their unwavering strength. Her mother told her, "Beauty is more than what you see in the mirror. It's in the strength of your heart and the kindness of your spirit." These words made Nkechi realize how far she had strayed from her own true self. It was then that Nkechi understood. She had allowed herself to be defined by Chike's shallow views, but in her heart she knew better. Her mother's wisdom had lit a fire in her, and she began to think about the woman she wanted to be, not the woman Chike expected. She had been so focused on changing her body for someone else that she had lost sight of the person she truly was. With newfound clarity, Nkechi decided she would no longer change herself for anyone. She knew that to find happiness, she had to learn to love herself, flaws and all. She would start by taking better care of herself, not to please Chike, but for her own well-being. No longer would she let anyone dictate how she should look or feel. The change began with her mindset. Before leaving her mother's house, Nkechi stood in front of the mirror one last time. For the first time in months, she didn't look for flaws. She saw a woman who was strong, capable, and deserving of love. This was the woman Chike had fallen in love with before the criticisms began. And this was the woman she would continue to be, regardless of anyone's opinion. Nkechi returned home to find the silence between her and Chike heavier than ever. It felt as though the walls of their home were closing in on her, each step she took growing colder. Chike, oblivious to the changes within her, went about his days as if nothing had happened. But Nkechi was different now. The thoughts of their wedding day, his cruel words, and her desperate attempts to please him had left scars deeper than the eye could see. She knew it was time to speak. One evening, as Chike sat on the couch, absorbed in his phone, Nkechi stood before him, her heart racing but her voice steady. "Chike, we need to talk," she said. He looked up, startled by the seriousness in her tone, but said nothing. She continued, her words coming out with a strength she didn't know she had. "You hurt me. Your words on our wedding day wounded me in ways I can't explain. I've tried to change for you, to meet your expectations, but it's tearing me apart." Chike was quiet for a moment, his face unreadable. Then, With a shrug, he replied, "I only said what was on my mind. It wasn't that deep, Nkechi." His words felt like a slap to her face. How could he dismiss her pain so easily? How could he not see how much his words had torn her apart? The conversation felt like a wall between them, separating her from the man she once loved. Her courage was met with indifference, and her heart sank. As Chike went back to his phone, Nkechi realized that the man she had married might never understand her. His superficial views on beauty, his lack of empathy, and his inability to see her as more than just a physical body. It all became too clear. In that moment, she understood that she had been fighting for someone who would never fight for her. She had tried to make him love her, but love wasn't supposed to come with conditions. Nkechi stood in silence for a long moment, the weight of the conversation settling heavily on her chest. She had reached the end of the road with Chike. She could no longer shrink herself for someone else. The decision was clear. She had to choose herself, even if it meant letting go of the man who was supposed to be her partner. But how could she walk away from everything they had built? The uncertainty of the future loomed over her. Yet, she knew she couldn't stay. In the days that followed, Nkechi focused solely on her own healing. She started therapy, something she had always considered, but never had the courage to do before. Each session brought new discoveries about herself, about her worth, and about the unhealthy ways she had allowed herself to be treated. She learned that the love she had been seeking from Chike was not the love she needed. The love she needed was the love she gave herself. Slowly but surely, Nkechi began to reclaim her strength. She started embracing her body, even her slim frame, as a part of who she was. She reconnected with the activities she once loved, dancing, reading, traveling, and found peace in her independence. No longer did she feel the need to change for anyone. She was enough. Just as she was, this newfound strength flowed into every area of her life, and for the first time in years, she felt alive again. Meanwhile, Chike began to notice the changes in Nkechi. She was no longer the woman who sought his approval. She was vibrant, confident, and at ease with herself. He watched her with a mix of confusion and frustration. Who was this woman? And where had the girl he married gone? He didn't understand that it wasn't the woman who had changed. It was him who had failed to see the beauty and power that had always been within her. One evening, Chike tried to engage her in a conversation, but Nkechi knew in her heart that it was too late. He apologized, but his apology felt hollow, like words that were too little, too late. She had already begun the process of letting go, not out of bitterness, but out of self-love. She didn't need his validation anymore. She had learned that true love comes from within, and no one could take that from her. With a heavy heart, Nkechi knew it was time to leave. Not because she wanted to punish Chike, but because she had finally learned that her happiness was not tied to him. She packed her things and left, not in anger, but in peace. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to walk it alone if it meant finding her true self. Nkechi moved into a small apartment, a space that was entirely her own. The silence was a welcome change, and she quickly settled into a routine that was all about her well-being. She no longer had to hide her body or pretend to be someone she wasn't. Every morning, she woke up with a sense of gratitude for the freedom she had found. For the first time in years, she felt in control of her life. In her new space, Nkechi flourished. She attended new classes, met new people, and found joy in simple things. Reading, walking in the park, cooking her favorite meals. The woman she had once been, the one who had sought validation from others, was now gone. In her place stood a confident, self-assured woman who knew her worth and was unapologetic about it. Chike, on the other hand, was struggling. He had not expected Nkechi to leave. He had thought she would always be there, waiting for him to see her the way he wanted. But now, without her, he realized just how much he had taken her for granted. He missed her presence, her laughter, and the way she had made their home feel like a true home. But it was too late. Nkechi was gone, and so was the version of him that had once been capable of love. Chike eventually sought help, trying to understand why he had treated Nkechi the way he had. He learned that his insecurities about his own self-worth had projected onto her. His obsession with appearance had blinded him to the deeper qualities that truly mattered in a relationship. It was a painful journey, but one that would eventually lead him to understand the true meaning of love and respect. As for Nkechi, she found herself on a journey of self-discovery. She realized that her worth had never been tied to her body or anyone's opinion of her. She was enough, just as she was. With each passing day, she grew stronger, more confident, and more at peace with who she was. The future was uncertain, but it no longer mattered. What mattered was that she had finally found herself. Months passed, and Nkechi's life continued to evolve. One afternoon, she met Tayo, a kind and thoughtful man who worked in her office. He admired her for her intelligence and strength, never once focusing on her physical appearance. It was a refreshing change, and Nkechi felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. But she was cautious. Could she trust herself to love again? Tayo and Nkechi's friendship grew quickly. They spent hours talking about life, love, and everything in between. Tayo respected her boundaries and never once made her feel like her body was something that needed changing. Slowly, Nkechi began to open up, sharing her past and the pain she had endured. Tayo listened with compassion, never judging, but simply supporting her journey of healing. As time went on, Nkechi realized that Tayo's love was different from Chike's. It wasn't conditional. It wasn't rooted in superficial expectations. It was real, grounded in mutual respect and understanding. Nkechi began to believe that love could be kind, gentle, and free of judgment. She didn't need to change for Tayo. He accepted her just as she was. One evening, as they walked through the park, Tayo turned to Nkechi and said, "I've always admired you for your strength, Nkechi. Your beauty goes far beyond what I see. It's in your heart, your mind, and your spirit." For the first time in years, Nkechi felt truly seen. She wasn't just loved for her appearance. She was loved for who she was. With Tayo, Nkechi learned the true meaning of love. It wasn't about changing yourself to fit someone's idea of perfection. It was about finding someone who loved you for exactly who you were. She had spent so many years searching for validation from the wrong person. Now, she was finally at peace, knowing that she had found a love that was unconditional. Chike, having realized his mistakes, tried to reach out to Nkechi, but she had moved on. She had found peace within herself, and though he was sorry for the way he had treated her, she couldn't go back. The love they once had was broken beyond repair, and she knew that it was time to embrace the future. no longer burdened by his judgments. Nkechi had become a beacon of strength in her community, encouraging other women to embrace their true selves. She started workshops, speaking to young girls and women about the power of self-love and confidence. She spoke from experience, from the pain of being judged for her body to the triumph of reclaiming her identity. Her work brought her fulfillment, and she felt proud of the woman she had become. No longer afraid of the world's opinions, she was able to live authentically. Her dreams no longer felt distant. She had the courage to pursue everything she had once put aside in her quest to please others. Nkechi's life was now hers to shape. She had freedom, love, and peace in a way she had never imagined. She traveled, met new people, and explored new opportunities. The chains of her past had been broken, and she was no longer afraid to be herself. As she sat alone one evening, reflecting on her journey, Nkechi realized that the love she had always sought was not found in the arms of others, but within herself. She smiled softly, knowing that she was enough, just as she was. The future held endless possibilities, and she was ready to embrace them all. The winds of change had brought Nkechi a newfound clarity. She no longer worried about the things she couldn't control: her body, others' opinions. She had learned that the true measure of beauty was in the strength to live authentically. With each passing day, she became more comfortable with herself, and the world seemed a little brighter. Nkechi's story spread throughout her community, inspiring others to embrace their bodies, flaws, and all. Young women began to stand taller, no longer seeing their bodies as something to be fixed. They saw themselves as worthy of love and respect, just as they were. Nkechi's work continued to grow, and she became a symbol of resilience. Her message was clear. Self-love was the key to living a fulfilled life. No one could define her worth but herself, and she would continue to pass this message on, one person at a time. Years later, Nkechi stood in front of a new generation, telling her story once more. She had come full circle, no longer a woman defined by her body, but by her heart. She had become the person she had always wanted to be: strong, confident, and free. With the final words of her speech, Nkechi left the stage, a smile playing on her lips. She had learned that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought within, and in the end, the victory was not in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. Nkechi woke up to a crisp morning, the sun shining brightly through the window of her cozy apartment. It had been months since she left Chike, and as the days passed, she felt more at peace. Each morning, she woke up with a new sense of purpose. She no longer carried the burden of other people's expectations. The road ahead was hers to walk. There was no rush, no need to hurry. Every step she took was a step toward the life she had always dreamed of, a life of freedom, self-love, and peace. Her career flourished as well. Nkechi poured her energy into her work, discovering talents she never knew existed within her. She had always been passionate about helping others, and now she had the platform to do so. She began organizing self-love workshops, sharing her story with young women who were going through the same struggles she had faced. As she spoke to groups of women, her confidence grew. She no longer feared rejection or judgment. The admiration in their eyes was not about her physical appearance, but about the authenticity she radiated. Months later, Teo, the man who had shown her the meaning of unconditional love, became a constant presence in her life. But Nkechi had learned the most valuable lesson of all. She didn't need to depend on anyone for validation. If Tayo loved her, it was because he saw her worth, not just her body, but the strength and resilience that had shaped her journey. He admired her for her kindness, her intelligence, and her deep sense of self-respect. And Nkechi, for the first time, allowed herself to be loved without fear or hesitation. She understood that love was not about fitting into a mold, but about being seen for who you truly are. Chike, having gone through his own transformation, reached out to Nkechi one final time. He was different now, more understanding, less focused on outward appearances. But it was too late for them. Their paths had diverged. He had apologized countless times, but Nkechi no longer needed his validation. She had grown beyond their past together. She had learned that healing didn't come from forgiveness alone. It came from learning to let go of what no longer served her. As Nkechi looked out the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she realized that her journey had come full circle. She had gone from a woman who once sought approval for her body to a woman who now embraced every part of herself. She had learned that beauty wasn't something that could be dictated by others. It was something that radiated from within. Nkechi smiled, a quiet confidence in her eyes. The future was bright, and she was ready for whatever it held. She had finally found peace within herself, and that peace was all she needed.